everybody, and welcome back to SA Smart Chats, part of the Mayor's K-12 Smart City Challenge. So we have another amazing guest from the San Antonio River Authority. With me today is Michelle Garza, who is a planning specialist. Michelle, welcome to SA Smart Chats.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so planning specialist students are probably have lots of ideas maybe of what that could possibly be, but tell me more. What is your role at San Antoni River Authority?
So as a planning specialist, I coordinate development along the San Antonio River and some of the creeks that lead into the river. In some of those areas, water quality mitigation or making sure that your stormwater runoff is clean before it enters the river is mandatory. So I work with developers that are adding different projects along the river to make sure that they understand those different qualifications, and we ensure that their runoff is clean before it enters the river.
And so this year's competition is all about environmental quality, and you gave us a little bit, but can you tell me more of how does your team support this topic of environmental quality?
Yeah, so the River Authority's mission is really to ensure that we create safe, clean, and enjoyable creeks and rivers. We have over 300 employees that are working to align all of our projects, efforts, and goals and measure progress along the way to meet that mission statement. We do a lot of work in creeks and rivers, and we have a 4-county jurisdiction, so that's almost the entire San Antonio watershed. And the River Authority does projects. We design projects, we manage projects, and maintain projects that include things like dams, parks, trails, all throughout the San Antonio River watershed. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. A lot of that has to do with testing for water quality, checking different life in the river, and it's a lot. And the main impact to our rivers is the land. So all of the runoff from the land or in our watershed is what impacts our river. So we work with everybody outside of the river to make sure that our river is clean and healthy.
And when you say planning, so I know that's in your title, planning specialist, is it a coordination effort between those organizations? Is it planning how to collect data? Like, tell me more. What do you mean specifically your role of planning?
Yeah, so as a planning specialist, I'm working with our experts internally at the River Authority, whether they're engineers, scientists, managers that are planning other projects, to identify areas that we may need to improve, but also to protect areas that we've identified as being special, and to plan projects. An example would be the West Side Creek's ecosystem restoration. So this is an area that's getting a complete overhaul, bringing a channelized area that's just there for flood conveyance into something that's more of an ecosystem to improve that area. So that has to do with coordination at the city level, the county level, and we do a lot of work with the Corps of Engineers.
So this topic of environmental quality is what kids are tackling. Do you have some ideas of some specific challenges that students might consider for this project?
Yeah, I'm really interested in kind of the intersection of how our environment takes care of us and why we need to take care of our environment, all about environmental health. And I got interested in this when I was a Bachelor in Environmental Science and learning all those connections, how all life is connected. And thinking about that in the city, we have a lot of buildings, what we call impervious cover, a lot of streets, a lot of parking lots. And with all of that, not natural environment comes a lot of pollution. Every time it rains, all of that water that hits those surfaces picks up a lot of pollution. Some of that is pollution you can see, like trash. Other things you can't see, like bacteria, oils, greases, and gases. And heat is another thing you really can't see. And so with our built environment, how do we change those building infrastructure to something that's more nature-based infrastructure so that we get those environmental benefits? So that's really the challenge that I really like to think about is how can we mitigate pollution like stormwater runoff using things like rain gardens, for example, that capture that runoff and allow it to be treated through many layers of plant material and filtering layers before it outfalls to the creek clean. And, we get so many benefits from plants. Plants sequester carbon, they cool our environment. So if we had things like rain gardens all over the city and next to parking lots off of streets, maybe our city wouldn't be as hot and our rivers certainly wouldn't be as polluted.
How did you get into this field? Like you mentioned your background, but I would love to know more about how you ended up doing what you do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been working for quite a while. I started at Starbucks Coffee and I
Really?
got interested in how kind of the world is connected. At Starbucks, we talked a lot about how the growers and the people that were making the coffee, took such care of the coffee. So, I had a sense of like this world connection and how we all needed to take care of each other, but also that environmental component because coffee is kind of hard to grow and it doesn't grow everywhere. And having that community around the world. And when I got into environmental science and really started to learn how like all life is connected, that kind of grew that sense of connection and needing to work with the environment as opposed to kind of against it or thinking that we were separate from it. And I'll say the thing that really changed my life was being in a summer internship out in Taos, New Mexico, where they build something called an earthship. These are completely off the grid, sustainable homes that capture rainwater to be used in the home like 4 times. They're solar powered. They use the systems of the earth, so they're tucked into the earth. So they're a constant temperature. And that idea of like building with nature, I really got inspired to figure out how to do that in a big city. I know we can't all have earthships, but how can we work more within our natural systems, things like green infrastructure and, putting maybe green roofs on our homes to, improve our quality of life.
And you brought up this idea of land development and that it's the land that's having a big impact on the river. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, definitely. If you think about outside of San Antonio, there's a lot of green space. We go out to the hill country. We may go to a park. And what's different in that space is kind of obvious, right? From the city. In the city, it's, more of a concrete jungle. We have streets, we have parking lots, we have buildings. And all of that built environment has changed the water cycle, if you will, in a city. So all of that water, instead of going into the ground and recharging our streams and our aquifers, instead runs off. And unfortunately, we have a lot of pollution in our cities. And so when that water runs off, it takes that pollution and quickly drains into our creeks and rivers. In San Antonio, our stormwater network is separate from our sewer network. So a lot of people don't know that what's running down the streets will end up into our creeks and rivers. And, having a healthy creek and river system is really beneficial to the ecosystem services that it provides. We're really lucky to have that run through our city. It provides a lot of cooling, it provides a lot of air quality cleaning. So bringing back that green infrastructure into our cities, making them cooler with it, making them more connected for, all of the birds and butterflies that use San Antonio as a flyway really can help us reduce some of those mitigation or some of those issues that we have with pollution and heat and, make our cities function more like those areas that are outside our city.
Well, thank you for sharing all these ideas. I think this gives a lot of potential, challenges the students can tackle in this competition. So, my final question for you: We have middle and high school students that are part of this competition. Many are very passionate about helping the environment. What advice do you have for those students?
Yeah, I would say learn as much as you can. Don't get discouraged by not being able to do it all. Everybody has their part to play, and your inspiration and your knowledge and enthusiasm will be contagious. I'm really excited for you. I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you so much for what you do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining me on SA Smart Chats.
My pleasure. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.